Hi everyone, this is Andrew Prima, Ukrainian American, reporting from Kiev. In today's podcast, week 101 of war in Ukraine, and this is the last week of January of 2024 and the half of the week of February 2024. In today's podcast, we're going to talk about the latest updates from the front lines. We're going to talk about Ukrainian armed forces sink another Russian military ship. We also going to cover the constant attacks on Crimea, specifically Russian air base Balbek. So, latest updates from the front lines. New geolocation footage shows the advance of occupying Russian troops near Kremenaya and Avdiivka against the background of position and battles throughout the theater of operations. At the same time, the Russian Federation claims about the capture of the village of Tabaivka in the Kharkiv region remain unconfirmed, and the offensive actions of the Russian Federation in this area are most likely aimed at cutting Ukraine lines of communication and not capturing Kupiansk itself. During January 22, Russian troops continued offensive operation in the northeast and east of Kupiansk, but have no confirmed advances. Positional battles continued northeast of Kupiansk in the area of village Sinkivka and Petropavlivka. The spokesman of the commander of the ground forces of Ukraine, Volodymyr Fitio, said that occupiers continue to give preference to the Kupiansk direction and the combat activity of the Russians is more intense in the Kupiansk Liman line than around Bakhmut. Also, Fitio added that the Russian military can shift its offensive focus from Kupiansk area to other parts of eastern Ukraine and added that the Russian army has increased the use of barrage munitions from 20-30 drones per day to up to 40. The Ukrainian military has not yet confirmed the statements of Russian sources that on January 28th, the occupiers advanced to the southeast of Kupiansk. Russian militants also continue to claim that units of the Russian 47th Tank Division allegedly captured the village of Tabaivka and the dominant heights in the area after the capture of Krakhmalny. So, last week, Ukraine drowned another Russian naval ship, Ivanovets. On the night of Thursday, February 1, Special Forces of Ukraine destroyed Ivanovets, missile boat of the Black Sea Fleet of the Russian Federation, for the first time in history, as a result of a group attack by naval drones directed via space satellite. A warship that was on the move in the open sea in the full combat readiness was completely destroyed. On February 1st, Ukrainian naval drones of the Group 13 unit, which is a special unit of the main intelligence service of Ukraine, destroyed a Russian missile boat in the Black Sea near the protected naval base in the temporarily occupied Crimea. Project 12411 missile boat, which Ivanov is called, with a displacement of up to 500 tons, with a crew of 40 people armed with P-270 Mosquito anti-ship missiles. Judging by the video, a group of at least 5 naval drones of the Ukrainian intelligence forces infiltrated the Danuzlav base of the Black Sea Fleet of the Russian Federation unnoticed, and the drones successfully attacked the missile boat, which was conducting combat patrols and defense of the base. It is worth noting that Russian intelligence didn't even notice the drones approaching the boat. According to Ukrainian intelligence, the crew of the missile boat Ivanovets was who noticed the approach of the drones visually, and the ship was on the move at the time of the attack and could maneuver. A rocket boat could develop a speed of more than 30 knots and simply run away from our drones. But the ship Ivanovitz didn't have time to gain speed. The nose 76 millimeter anti-aircraft artillery installation AK-176, as can be clearly seen, was in the marching position, meaning it didn't turn on and didn't open fire. It is also not noticeable that the Russians managed to bring into battle two 30 millimeter anti-aircraft artillery AK-630, which are capable of conducting dense fire on moving targets at short distance. But apparently, machine gun fire was opened on the drone from a close range by the next watch. However, due to the small size, high speed, and maneuverability of Ukrainian drones, the Russians failed to hit them. The well chosen attack tactics by the commander of the Special Group 13 are admirable. The first drone hit the stern of the boat from the starboard side in order to disable the propellers. The boat could not develop full speed but didn't stop. Then the second drone also hit the propellers from the other side. With these two blows, the boat was reliably deprived of motion and maneuverability. After that, the ship was completely finished off. The third drone hit the middle uh, of the of the hull under the Mosquito missile launchers and caused a large tear in the port side. But the results of the hit are visible from the camera of the fourth drone, which the operator directed directly into the raven from the third drone in the same place. The explosion from the fourth drone was fatal for the ship. As a result of the impact, four Mosquito missiles were detonated, the total weight of which is 4 tons each. The missile boat Ivanovitz was literally blown to pieces. The crew had almost no chance to survive. The brilliant success of the Ukrainian soldiers, command and operators of the Group 13 of Special Intelligence Services of Ministry of Defense showed high intelligence, planning, training, and operation management. Attack tactics deserve to be studied as a model. So another successful hit. Ukraine hit a Russian airbase Balbek last week. On Wednesday, January 31st, the Air Force of the Ukraine Armed Forces hit the Balbek airfield in the temporarily occupied Crimea. Local residents published photos and videos of Russian military equipment burning as a result of attack. On January 31st, an air alert was announced in the temporarily occupied Crimea. Explosions rang out. The occupiers announced the work of air defense. The strike on this airfield was quite successful. According to the Russian channels, there were bad news from Crimea. Three military jets were lost. One of them was completely destroyed because the missile hit the plane itself. Two more planes were significantly damaged, and there is question whether it makes sense to repair them. In addition, 12 occupiers who consulted near these planes were killed and another 10 soldiers were wounded. Ukraine forces also Ukrainian forces also hit the training camp of the Russian Special Forces, and 209 soldiers of the Russian Special Forces were killed. So, in general, it can be considered that the strike was quite successful and the Russians suffered serious losses, both in equipment and in the high qualified personnel, such as aviation specialists, communications specialists, and elite special force fighters. Of course, Baalbek Airfield is called the main military airfield of Crimea, but it's not the only one. There are five main battlefields that Russia has. The Russians wanted to turn Crimea into a main aircraft base unreachable by Ukrainians as a result of the strike. No other Russian aviation unit suffered such a number of strikes almost on all Russian airfields in Crimea. In general, three regiments of the 27th Mixed Aviation Divisions, whose headquarters are in Sevastopol, Crimea, are based there from the frontline aviation. Gvardeysk Airfield, 37th Mixed Aviation Regiment, and Su-24 and Su-25 attack aircraft are there as well. The regiment lost at least two Su-24 jets and many Su-25s in the south in the Kherson direction. So the next airfield is the 38th Aviation Regiment, which is Belbek Airfield. As I just mentioned, its losses. The next airfield, 39th Helicopter Regiment, John Coy. Almost a third of the regiment was lost there because the K 52 helicopters suffered the greatest number of losses for the entire Russian army aviation. Of the more than 140 helicopters they had in the combat at the beginning of the war, somewhere between 40 and 45 of them were already lost. So, and let's not forget about another airfield, Saki Novofedivka airfield, which has suffered a lot lately. After the strikes on the airfield, this regiment lost half of its planes. You probably remember the most successful attack on the airfield somewhere in August 2022, when up to a dozen planes were destroyed right on the airfield. It is very inconvenient for the Russians to transfer all the aviation from Crimea because other airfields are located quite far away. They have their own units there. Well, it is near Akhtarsk, for example, right on the Russian shore of the Sea of Azov, but the Su 25 regiment is based there. The airport is small. Moving on, there are several airfields in Mozdok, but they also have their own units. And most importantly, the Russians have fighter regiments based here, which generally patrol the Black Sea. So they patrol the Black Sea so the Ukrainians cannot strike Crimea. This is their actual main task. If they withdraw fighter jets from the Crimean Peninsula, they will leave Crimea without fighter cover, which is really dangerous. And not only Crimea, but the entire southern section of the front. And Su 24 bombers are also based in Crimea. It seems to be the 37th Mixed Aviation Regiment. Su 25 attack aircraft are also sit there, which are also actively used on the southern section of the front. That is, Russian planes were in Crimea and they remain there. And regardless of the losses, they will still remain in the Crimean airfields, which is going to be a potential attack for Ukrainian forces. In my view, the picture is now emerging in the sky, and the sea indicates one critical change on the battlefield. Now, with the help of Western weapons, Western radars, and various other systems, Ukraine is gradually becoming a more advanced military technical side of the war than the Russian Federation. That is, weapons in Ukraine are gradually becoming better than in Russia, more long range, more alert, faster, more deadly, etc. On February 24 of 2022, everyone in the world believed that Ukraine had weak ground-based air defense and old, backward and small air force which was constantly out of the kerosene, and half of the planes were idle without spare parts, as well as navy that was practically not existent. It was believed that under these conditions, Russians should have easily gained complete dominance in the air and, of course, put the Black Sea under its complete control. Even among experts who sympathized with Ukraine, it was believed that this was simply inevitable. But thanks to the Neptune missiles, Russia was unable to take control of the sea because the naval ship Moskva, if you remember, that was the flagship of the Black Sea Fleet, was totally destroyed, and it generally served as the main air defense hub for the entire Russian Black Sea Fleet. The Russian Black Sea Fleet was left without anti aircraft cover, so it was impossible to gain dominance at the sea. Russian aviation fleet is significantly bigger than Ukrainian. It operates more freely in the sky, but still, Russian planes cannot fly to Kiev and bomb Kiev, and they cannot even fly over Kharkiv or Odessa to drop bombs. They can shoot missiles from a long distance, but they still cannot fly directly over the territories controlled by Ukraine. And it turns out that two critical tasks for the Russian armed forces from the very beginning of this great invasion were not solved. Well, now the situation has changed by 180 degrees because the Russian Black Sea Fleet has now turned from a predator that prowled, looked for victims, and controlled the entire sea, blocking all ships, turning into a victim. So, why the situation changed? In Ukraine, the quality of planning and execution of very complex operations in the air and the sea has seriously increased. What happened on the night of the December 26th is really a super complicated operation. Crimea is very seriously protected by means of air defense, and the fact that it was possible not just to hit this ship, but to sink it and to damage the port infrastructure and destroy the railway junction there is in general a huge success of the Ukrainian Air Force. Well, it also happens with the help of our Western allies for sure. The US and NATO are now assisting Ukraine armed forces by providing the intelligence, the reconnaissance, the reconnaissance of the Western partners. Drones or NATO planes are constantly watching in the sky over the Black Sea. They constantly monitor the Russian military, that is, in addition, in the entire occupied south of Ukraine and the Krasnodar territory. So, the people look at where the Russian ships are based, where they sail, where they return from, where the Russians' planes are located, where they fly, where they stand on the ground, where the ground equipment is situated, including tanks, guns, mortars, and so on. So on, it's all different. Since NATO countries do not take part in the war, they cannot hide. They can absolutely calmly probe the territory of the controlled Russia hundreds of kilometers deep with their radars. Thanks to this, we know where and at what point in time Russian equipment is located. And since Ukraine is a NATO ally, and this is not hidden anymore, NATO members can share the intelligence they have acquired with Ukraine armed forces, which helps us a lot to target the Russian forces. Only helping each other will allow all of us to defeat the Putin's war regime that is killing thousands of people daily. If you remember, Putin came into power in 2000, and through all the war conflicts, as of today, Putin is responsible to up to 500,000 of deaths worldwide. And one time, we hope he's gonna pay for his crimes. Thank you for listening. If you like my podcast, please share with your friends.